You start not living parts of your life because of what your body looks like at a specific time, or you're putting it on hold for something to happen. And I think that's one of the saddest things when it comes to the shame of being in a larger body or feeling that you're in one. I think you could be a very small girl and feel the exact shame as someone that is in a larger body. You're not going to experience the same privilege. So when I think of a larger woman versus a really thin woman, not only is the larger woman in her head about her body, it's reinforced continually with the stigmas that we experience. When I do look back at growing up and I try to think of memories, and I actually went to a counselor that did, I think it was called like a regression therapy, where you'd go back and from every year of your life you had to remember something. And every year of my life, it was always something negative, and often it was something about my body. And I think my earliest memory, and it sounds strange, but it was when Mount St. Helens blew up, and I was over at my great-grandma's birthday party, and so it was a big family gathering. And when the mountain blew up, it got very dark there, and there were cousins and lots of family members there. And their dad carried all the cousins out, and my dad did not carry me out. And I remember thinking at the time that, well, that's, strange. I was probably 8 years old. And I think that's where it became embedded that bigger bodies are not worthy of protection. And not that I was really that big of a body, but when I compared myself to my cousins who were very thin, that's the connection I first made.
The lens through which we view the world starts being shaped in early childhood, and the messages most strongly reinforced become the stories we believe to be true about ourselves. For Stephanie Hance, one message seemed to follow her wherever she went, making her believe the only way she could ever be worthy of love was to fix her body.
Hating how I looked, or I guess the shame connected with it, did affect many things. I don't even know if I had a lot of time to think about being loved, which is sad. I was just I truly hated what I looked like, to the point where I didn't necessarily even see those around me. I was so focused on me, and love didn't even come into it because there's no way I could get to love in that way, or at least permanently, without fixing this. And so I think there was just a lot of shame associated with what my body looked like and what I couldn't control. And it would be reinforced by family that did not mean any ill intent, but because everyone, I think, is in the same weight-structured world. But if you go to any kind of party, it was always a comment on someone's body, whether they look really good because they've lost weight or out of earshot, oh, they've put on weight. And then my grandma growing up, because she found some weight loss success, she was just obsessed, all the time. And I remember girls, before they're going to have their periods, tend to put on weight. That's natural. And so that started happening to me. And my grandma at the time would, she had lost a lot of weight on some Atkins thing. So she was always, when we'd go to the store, hey, do you want fruit or candy? But there was an implication that the candy was bad, the fruit was good. And she started talking to me about losing weight and how you can lose weight. So that was probably, maybe I was 10 or 11. And then in 5th grade, I remember being in this group setting, and I had on this t-shirt that said like Boutwell, Seattle, I think, on it. And one kid said, oh, look, she's got a fat roll where it says Seattle, and said it in front of like 3 classrooms. So that was humiliating. I remember being with friends and we'd get mooed at, or just cruel things, that people would say. Even if it's anything about your body, like your knees are strange, or I got squished behind a door by a boy. And instead of just thinking, well, that kid's a jerk, I thought, well, I'm being squished because of my size. It was always a connection to body somehow. Once you're convinced you are a certain size, it's hard to undo that. Even when my body would go down in size, I wouldn't see it that way. Then from there, I started some behaviors that weren't great. I would try bulimia, and with the bulimia, when I would try that, my blood vessels would break in my eyelids, so you could tell I was throwing up. So I thought, okay, I can't be a bulimic. Then the diet pills, Weight Watchers several times. I remember they'd have those after-school specials where it'd be like on anorexia, and I'd watch it, and I would actually be so enthused. I'd think, okay, I can get this anorexia. I can make this happen. And so then I'd start, like I remember starting some diet where all I did was eat 2 pieces of bread a day, and that's it. And I did it for like 2 weeks. But then I would find shame because I couldn't keep it going. So that's where my shame kind of thing started. Shame of not being worthy of protection, shame that my body wasn't acceptable, and then the shame from failing at dieting. And that one was probably the worst because growing up, I grew up in a Christian community, and that meant a lot to me. And so I was at church and they brought this new diet in called the Way Down Workshop.
Welcome to Way Down, the pioneer of faith-based weight loss. No other program has.
And so there were tapes, audio tapes you would listen to with Gwen Shamblin.
When you get the truth is going to set you permanently free. Way Down is the answer that you've been looking for.
The woman's insane. And it was basically you don't diet, you just stop the moment there's an absence of hunger. So in the beginning, it was amazing. I could go eat a hot fudge sundae or whatever, and it wouldn't matter as long as it was within hunger. But then what happened over time, it became a diet itself because I would start like, oh, was I a little outside of hunger? And they connected it to the Bible. So the video would talk about weight loss being like the Exodus, like we're wandering in the desert, which is our trial with food, and how we're looking to be fed from God. And, God fed people with manna, and how he gave them just enough, and then it would dissolve. And if they tried to store it up, it would rot. So there was all these things where you could pull a little bit out of the Bible, and then from there you're like, well, yeah, that makes sense. She'd pull the parts where there'd be verses about judgment associated with not turning from sin or staying in sin. And sin is overeating. Therefore, if you stay in sin, you are now sinning against God, and then at a certain point, God will turn his back on you. And if you keep sinning by going against your body's natural hunger mechanism, God will be done with you.
So literally believing I'm going to hell because of the size of my body.
Yes. Truthfully, I literally believed that if I could not control how much I ate, which in turn controlled what my body looked like, I was sinning. And if I could not stop sinning or repent from sin, eventually God will give up on me. And if God gives up on you, in my version of Christianity, you go to hell.
Shame most commonly makes us believe we will be separated from the people in our lives. But when you can also convince someone of faith that their shame is so great it separates them from God, that's a dangerous place to be because it can lead people to believing they'd be better off dead. Stephanie has pages and pages of old journal entries from the decades of diet culture consuming her. And sure enough, feeling completely detached from any purpose aside from weight loss, death did cross her mind.
I spent $65 today for this journal, a Bible, and a 2-pack of pens. Just another drop in the bucket, feeling a well spent on various ways to lose weight. To be honest, I'm desperate. I'm 38 and I'm nowhere closer to getting control of my gluttony. I actually emailed an eating disorder doctor a few weeks ago. No reply received. I'm convinced that I'm an addict and that God is the only answer, but I don't really know if God cares to help me anymore. Death seems like the only final solution. Of course, I have no desire to really off myself, but the idea of spending an eternity not thinking about food and my girth is very attractive. I'm really not very happy. I'm back where I started. I'm pretty sure I've gained any weight I had lost back. Why?
Diet culture makes us believe obsessing about our bodies provides the secret to happiness, but really it makes us habitually unsatisfied, turning us away from the intuitive relationship with food we were born with so quickly that even children can find themselves feeling a sense of shame or guilt with their food choices. The truth is, obsessing over diets and weight loss steals an unknowable number of lives. Many are not aware, for example, that eating disorders are actually the deadliest mental health disorder. And diet culture also steals lives in the figurative sense too, locking people up inside the prisons of their own minds. This was the story for one of Stephanie's best lifelong friends.
So I met my friend Jamie in second grade. That's where we first met. So we were really good friends. It would be the type of person you'd sit at your desks, we'd make each other laugh. We were very annoying, but we spent tons of time together. And Jamie was also in a larger body, and we both hated it and obsessed about it. And so she would be the one that would be my partner in crime when it would come to diets. We would try anything, that came out. But after a while, when you're just tired of it and you can't keep it going, you also have this camaraderie in a friend where you're just excited that you're going to be able to go binge eat with someone, if that makes any sense at all. And then there would be camaraderie and let's do a new diet together and see if we can finally beat this. So the one that really sticks in my head the most is Fen because she had so much success with it.
Of all the recent diet crazes, few were as hot as Fen. Billed as a wonder drug.
Fen was very popular, so everyone was talking about it. But yeah, you'd just go in and they'd write you a prescription. It was no big deal. You'd take all your pills. It was huge at the time, and tons of people were on it. And I loved Fen because somehow it would mentally make you forget about food, combined with making you not hungry. But then I got pregnant, and then obviously you can't put these chemicals in your body when you're pregnant. And I remember her going back east to be a nanny, and she came back and she was super skinny. And then there's this, like, you're happy for your friend, but you're jealous of your friend at the same time. Like, look what she did, and look what I failed at again, as if pregnancy is a failure. And that's kind of the sad thing. It's like you start, I don't know, putting different lenses on your life based on where you're at with the diet. But with Jamie, when they prescribed it, they gave her the wrong dosage. So she had like extra of whatever was, I guess, equivalent to speed. And eventually we found out that it's very bad for your heart.
It's been 1 week since the prescription diet drug was pulled off the market. That after studies linked the drug to heart problems. The class action suit filed Tuesday seeks monetary damages, payment for heart monitoring, and patient updates on any new findings. The suit also alleges the pharmaceutical companies knew about the drug's dangers.
She went in, found out that her heart was affected, and so she got a settlement of, I'd like to say $200,000 or $300,000. So when they give you a settlement like that, it's not for nothing. Something has definitely happened. Sad thing with Jamie, she actually married this guy, Frank, a great guy for her. He prefers women in larger bodies, but Jamie hated being in a larger body and was constantly fighting it. I mean, she was very athletic. She loves volleyball. She didn't let things hold her back. She would do all of the things, but ultimately she just wanted to be smaller. She decided to have gastric bypass. She went to all the pre-counseling. They knew her medical history, and everyone felt like, okay, this is probably an okay thing. And so she had the surgery, and she just like melted. The weight just like melted off of her. I remember going to see her, and it was just strange because she looked like a different person every time you would see her. One night I was laying in bed and I heard the answering machine go off.
Please leave a message.
It was her husband just saying that that they had found Jamie unresponsive in her car and that she was now at the hospital. And I just had that feeling at that time that she's gone. So we went to the hospital. Someone came out and said, would you like to say goodbye? She didn't make it. And just falling to my knees. And I'm not like a show emotion person, but I was outside myself. And just going in, see, I'll get emotional, and just seeing her laying there with a tube out of her mouth and petting her hair, and it was just really hard. Now, who's to say, she did have a family history of things happening to their hearts, but the way it was explained to me by someone in the healthcare profession, and this is not like verified, but that losing weight that rapidly is extremely hard on the body. With that, when you've got a history of potential heart problems anyways, then you take the fen that makes it worse, then you lose all this weight so rapidly. It was just like the perfect storm. So she was 36 years old and died. And so you'll probably never convince me that it wasn't related to that. You'll just never convince me otherwise that there wasn't some kind of relationship. Oddly enough, Jamie dying, and I would say dying from the desire to be thin, didn't change my point of view at the time. In fact, it just made me think, well, I need to lose this weight for her. She wasn't able to do it. So just think of how flawed that thinking is at the time. But I didn't know any different. I really did not know any different. I didn't lose weight immediately after that, but eventually I lost a lot of weight. I lost over 100 pounds. But I'm not spending any time with my kids because between work and the focus on losing weight, there was no time. It wasn't much anyways. So I almost now in retrospect feel like I've lost 2 years of my daughter's life, which is really hard looking back on. But also once I achieved the weight loss, well, first of all, my body did not look like what I thought it would look like. So you have this idea that when you lose weight, you're going to now have the flat stomach, you're going to have the great thighs, all those things. And you can get to a certain number and that still may not be your reality. So for me, I had still like the sagging stomach area because I've had 3 children, 3 C-sections, all those things. In fact, with the stomach, I had decided maybe I can go take a look at what a tummy tuck would cost. And so I talked to my husband. He said, "Oh, you can go get a quote. What's it going to hurt?" And that experience was crazy. So I went in, and the doctor, they couldn't just give you an ugly doctor. He was a really good-looking doctor, and I had to stand there like in a bra and underwear, and they're taking full frontal pictures from your side, from the back side, and then you have to sit next to this guy as he flips through all of your pictures. It was just humiliating because at that point, I'm still seeing just all the flaws. That's all I can see. And I think at the time he said like, well, we would actually have to give you a full body lift or you're not going to be happy with how you look. And I mean, according to today's standards, there were a lot of flaws to be seen and it was just horrible. And I left after I had to meet with a finance person to start talking. And I cried the entire day. I could not stop crying because all I could think is I've worked so hard. I've done all of this and I'm still unacceptable. But at the same time, I had lost all this weight and I felt like I was more recognized in the workplace. I was more seen. I remember thinking that I'm getting all of this attention and why? Just because my body looks different? Because when you're big, I think it's a combination of things. I think you want to not be seen, and then people also choose not to see you. And I think to be seen when you're bigger is you have to be more flamboyant, you have to be smarter, you have to try harder, you have to show all this confidence that's hard when you're not in that mental space. So I just remember starting to get really resentful. And I think those were the beginning seeds of what the heck is this all about? And then eventually all of the tricks I did to try to maintain what I looked like started to fail. And I was in anguish. I mean, I was continually thinking about it. I remember telling my mom, well, do I look bigger? Can you tell? Just obsessed with it. And we were driving down the road. I remember being on an Indian Trail road, driving with my husband. And I said, do you have any idea what it's like to be in my head? He said, well, what are you talking about? I said, let me just give you an idea of what it's been like my entire life, or at least since I can remember. If I'm going to a birthday party, before I even get there, I'm thinking, okay, maybe if I work out, maybe I could have a piece of cake. Funny enough, I don't even love cake, but when you can't have it, you obsess about it. So then I get to the party, and then maybe they have something else out that I like, and then I've eaten that too. Well, in the moment, I'm loving it, but then the shame would hit. It would horribly hit. And I would think, well, how am I going to be able to undo this? So then when I get back from the party, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I better get on the treadmill. I better go do this. I've got to do whatever I can to make my body stay like this because I'm getting a lot of positive reinforcement with this body. And what's going to happen when I don't have that? But I told him, you know what? Mentally, I just can't do this anymore. I feel broken. I can't do this anymore. And he just said, you know what? Do what you need to do. And so that's when I literally Googled, I feel crazy around food. What can I do? Didn't really know what I was getting into other than the fact, maybe I don't have to be insane around food and I can't let it control me anymore.
Stephanie got connected with a program that opened her eyes to intuitive eating. She started tuning into and being curious about her body. And after learning more about how diets literally untrain our mind-body connection with food, she committed to leave diets behind for good.
I truly believe that dieting is what's caused our bodies to become larger and larger and larger. Because the diet binge cycle, diet is a way of like you're pulling back a bow and arrow and you're pulling it and you're pulling it and you're pulling it and it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter until you can't pull it any further and you let go. And then here comes your binge. And I think dieting has given us a huge focus on food. It has screwed up our connection to body. You break that whole connection. So I think dieting just screws up what you were born with. And then you just start slowly eroding into that, I think, with comparing. And then your first diet, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. And before you know it, you are so off track. And I think the time period I grew up in, dieting was at an all-time high. And now what I see, there are still plenty of dieting out there. They just call it something different. So no, I'm not dieting. I'm just changing my way of life and I'm being healthy. So there's this huge focus on being healthy. Well, when being healthy has a list of what you can eat and not eat, it's still a diet, no matter what. And I'm not saying those things that they tell you to eat are bad or good. I'm just saying it messes with your mental ability and your physical ability to connect with self. And so I think where I struggle too is like when I'm talking about these things is I feel still people will look at you or look at me and say, well, you know, this is her excuse because she's in a larger body and this is her excuse to not try. And I think the biggest fear, honestly, is that they'll think that I'm fooling myself. That is my biggest fear, that they think that I'm fooling myself. But I know the weight that was lifted off of me, the mental weight that came off when I just thought, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I'll never diet again. I can't imagine being in that prison anymore. I can't believe the way I am now. And I couldn't go back even if I tried. I mean, there are times where I'm not thrilled that there's less clothing available for my size body than someone else's, for example. I'm not thrilled with that, but it is not worth the mental gymnastics to try to stay there at all. Just not worth it for me. I don't ever want to obsess about what I'm going to eat all day to the point where I don't have space for my family, for my friends. I never want my choices to be dictated by what is available to eat ever again. I think it's a total waste of a life. If you're saying no to things because of a pattern of eating, think of all the things you potentially could miss out on. If you just think about it, you never know what your day is going to go like. I've had those moments where I've run into someone and met someone that I would have never, have thought would impact me as greatly as they did. Whereas if I'm hiding or I'm in the world, but I'm so closed off because of hating what I look like, I'm not open to what's around me. I had to be out of the self-hatred before I could start living. I had to realize what more could you be if it wasn't just about trying to control what you look like. And when I had extra space available in my life that wasn't focused on starving myself to look a certain way, I just found I had time for interests that I did not know I had. So I will write sometimes, or I've gone and done a speech here or there on this, and I have really got into strength and weightlifting. So I actually found this gym, and the community of people there are amazing. I'm part of this small group, and I love my small group. It's Pam, and I love Pam. She's in her 70s. She is amazing. I want to be like Pam. Then you have Brenda. She owns this bike shop. She can be a little surly in the morning because she's tired, but she's hilarious. She's encouraging. My friend Tanya, I kept talking about this gym, and so eventually she came. I come in, I crack jokes because I'm a morning person. I'm probably very annoying to most of these people, but it's just fun. And I think that's it. When I decided that I don't care what my body looks like, I just want to do movement that feels good to me, that's when everything changed. I love being strong. It's something I could focus on that's kind of a goal, and you can measure it like, oh, look what I just did this time. But Derek is just, he's my trainer, And he was like, yeah, those squats look pretty good. Have you ever thought about, trying to do some powerlifting? And I'm like, I don't think so. So then finally he was like, well, why don't I want you, I think you should do this. And I thought, you know what? Why not? I guess I'll do this. And I just love it. I love how these people encourage each other to become whoever they want to become, to be stronger. Even so at the last competition, I messed up the back squat. I didn't understand the calls, even though it was explained to me many times, but I didn't care. It was so fun just to be with these people. And honestly, all ages, all sizes, just encouraging each other. It's been a process, I think, to find connection and to find self-love and liking my body. I don't love it every day, but I would say I like my body and what it can do. There were times where it was difficult, where I might wake up and I just feel fat that day, which I've been told feeling fat is actually not a feeling. It's indicative of something else. So when I'm feeling fat, I think, okay, what is really going on with you today? Oh, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of something. It could be physical because I put on clothing that was uncomfortable. It could be because I have to get up in front of a group of people and I'm afraid they won't accept me. So feeling fat to me now is more just underlying fear and connecting with whatever that is. Once I finally gave up on dieting and that I would look different, I decided that I have been worthy all along. I was worthy of relationship. I was worthy of the promotion. My voice should be heard. I shouldn't have to be quiet or apologetic for having a voice. And so now what's funny is that I'm back into a larger body, and it would never cross my mind that someone's not going to hear me, because they will hear me. They may not like it, but they're going to hear me. And I never fought for myself when I was in that place. It was too hard to. But I think once you realize you're not going to change, and maybe that's it. Because I remember telling my husband the other day, this is it. I'm not going to change. This is how I think now. When you have that constant of knowing that this is where you're at, you can just come back to it and connect to it. There's not this fear that something is going to shift. There's not this hope that I'm going to be something else. This is me, and I'm almost 50 years old now. This is what I've got, and if I don't live now, when am I going to live?